it's terrifying to see everything go vertical, but then it's also terrifying. It's like, oh my gosh, it's falling precipitously. I think it fell over 5% or something. But I figured out why, guys. I figured out why. You know why? It's because I had a dentist appointment. Everybody knew my crown was coming out. My tooth cracked, and they had to take out this massive crown right here in the back. It still hurts like a Dickens. Uh, that caused shorting in the gold space. Yeah, everybody knew that that tooth was coming on the market, and it knocked the price of gold down 5%. I kid you not. It's unbelievable. Anyway, we'll carry on from here. It's 4,100. Who can complain? Yeah. Okay. Before we plow, hold on. Don't go to the next slide yet, or I'm not done with the. Okay. One of the gauges I use in the junior space, I don't like the term junior. We'll say the microcap mining space is the money that's coming into the space. Okay, like, are there brain cells behind it or not? Okay, usually when you're at a top in the microcap space or the mining space in general, you got a lot of dumb money coming in. The generalists start to pour in money by just by bucket loads and stuff, and you don't see that yet. You really don't see that here. Okay, so it kind of tells me we're still in the early innings. Maybe we're at the bottom of the third. I don't know, top of the fourth. I don't know, somewhere in there. But we're certainly not in a position where we're seeing a lot of the dumb money coming in. I remember, I think Tavi had an exchange with somebody this week, and I caught wind of it. And he said, well, when Jim Cramer's shouting that it's a buy, that's usually a top. Yeah, I don't hear Jim Cramer shouting anything in the mining space is a buy right now. So we're clearly not at the top. But I would say I take great comfort in the fact that there isn't a lot of dumb money showing up. In fact, there's still a pretty good opportunity to deploy smart money, and I would like to consider ourselves part of that. One of the reasons I haven't been in the live videos here lately is I've been traveling an absolutely stupid amount here recently. One of the trips I made was actually to London last week. It was to the London Metal Exchange, the LME week, as they call it. And while at LME week, I got to do a lot of different things. I mean, there's the meetings associated with the event itself, but then there were other meetings I made. One of them is actually the ICMM council meeting, which they hold quarterly. And I took Sumitomo's position once we bought St. Cristobal from them. And I got to say, there were some profound changes that I noticed. Walking in that room, I noticed the absence of about maybe 7 or 8 prominent CEOs. These are CEOs of mining companies, or they were, I should say, CEOs of mining companies up until recently. And there has been a departure of many CEOs. Okay, you've seen Barrick. Their CEO's gone. Newmont, that CEO is on his way out, probably in the next couple of months. I think I can't remember the exact date, but soon. BHP, Rio Tinto. The list goes on. There's quite a few. I find it very, very interesting. Here we are in a space where commodity prices have risen, and yet we're seeing kind of a wholesale departure of the old guard in many of these mining companies. That does have a profound effect on mining companies' ability, or I should say, long-term vision. Okay, that's probably the best way to put it. Think about it. If you're in the process of changing out CEOs, it's probably not going to be a juncture during which you're going to go into M&A phase or something like this. You need to reestablish who the next management's going to be and stuff like that. So this year, I don't know exactly why. I asked a few friends of mine. I said, what do you think? Is it because they all want to exercise their options and get out while the getting's good, or what's going on? I got different answers. Most of them said, most of these guys are kind of at retirement age, and they're all more or less, acting in unison here as they hit retirement. I don't know what the reason is, but it is a profound change in the mining industry, and I think people need to be cognizant of it because I think it's going to take a little bit of time to kind of reset the vision in a lot of these companies, and that will have impact on the ultimate growth trajectory, the M&A trajectory, and stuff like this. So it might require a little patience. That's all I'm saying. But does it mean commodities are more and more abundant? No, we're dealing with a diminishing stock of good assets. So we haven't seen mines being built lately. All the tenets of our thesis remain intact that we are in a commodity bull, this being one of them. Okay, let's carry on. We're going to rip the Band-Aid off. Go to the first slide, or next slide. Rackla, what a shocker. Holy smokes. I'm just truly at a loss for words to explain exactly what's happened here. The company reported last year, this is fall of last year, roughly this time, they had talus samples along the bottom of the cliff there that showed continuous gold mineralization and pretty robust gold mineralization. And then sometime late last year, they also had a channel sample come back where they had actually done hard rock sampling on the hard rock, the face of the rock. And they got a pretty long, like a few tens of meters of 1 point something gram per ton. It in every respect, this looked like all systems go. The drilling, as you can see here, they presented the density of veining that they've seen in the drill holes. Again, usually when you see veining like this in a reduced intrusive system, it bodes well. Now, looking back when they started drilling, looking back at this deposit, or this, I should say, this prospect, there were some curious things. Like when I visited there in mid-July, saw lots of bismuth veins, like lots of little tiny veinlets with gray stuff, but couldn't see much visible gold. Okay, that set it apart from Snowline and others. Yet the guys had samples that they collected at surface, either spot samples or channel samples, and I could look at those rocks and say, those rocks also had these little gray veins in them, and they have gold. Okay, so why the drilling, the first three holes haven't generated the results to kind of back up or support the surface samples is a bit of a head scratch. Okay, but it is what it is. Did they hit no gold? No, they hit some gold. Okay, you can see over here on the right hand side, I won't read through them all, but you can see there's short intervals in virtually every hole they had. They have short intervals of gold. In some cases, gram plus, which isn't insignificant. It's just not big, long intervals. Okay. Did they have bismuth and tellurium also? Yes. Look at the two right-hand columns there. They had big bismuth numbers, and that's not a surprise given the amount of bismuth minerals that are evident, like visible in these veins. In fact, even beyond the veining or the assays that are reported here, there was bismuth in many, many veins. So like this is a world record for bismuth in my book. It's crazy how much there is. But there's not the gold, necessarily continuous gold. Now, is it a complete bust? Well, look, they have a few holes in here, and this is kind of like looking at a plate of spaghetti when you're looking straight out on it. But for example, there's hole 10 where you see a big stretch of dark red. That means high vein densities. And, could we see something that's a surprise out of here? I don't know. I hope so. Look, I guess my view is I'm holding my shares until I see what all the assays are, but I'm now of the view I just can't even begin to predict what might be coming from the subsequent holes that have yet to come back. Win some, lose some, but this is a real heartbreaker. It truly isn't. I'm disappointed, but you're going to kind of pick up the pieces and move on. Now, the company did put out another news release. Go to the next slide, talking about some new targets. Now, I realize folks are probably a bit jaded here based on the drill results from the BITE prospect that we just talked about. So, some of these targets, maybe they deliver. I don't know. There's this Manta, Calypso, and Ogre targets. These are all targets that they prospected that are all in this general neck of the woods as the bite target. These are different intrusions. These are different reduced intrusions that are nearby and on Rackla's ground. In each case, you can see they have some form of data, whether it's soils or talus, I should say, sampling or something, maybe a few rock chips that show there is gold mineralization in each one of these. Is it are any of these a slam dunk in light of what we've seen at Bite? Well, no, it's tough to say that, okay, because each one of these could hold the same sucker punch, I guess, of not failure to deliver. But it is what it is, guys. I wish I had better news for folks. I guess what I would say is the one really strong thing that Rackla has is a strong treasury. Okay, I think they have $10 million Canadian or something like that. So it will allow them to get out and test these things, or if they do have some good results out of the remaining holes at Bite, maybe we see them follow up with some more drilling next year. But again, it is what it is. Don't know what to say. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, now let's talk about the kind of the absolute opposite in terms of meeting expectations. This one meets expectations. Sitka. Okay, Sitka has been drilling at Rosgobble for quite some time. I mean, when I was there, which was early to mid July, I think, they had a couple of rigs up there, and they were just pounding out holes. They were drilling holes successfully in a big long line, and they put out news subsequent, as they drilled these holes, they talked about seeing visible gold and stuff. And now we're starting to see some of the assays come through. And you can see there's just phenomenal results here. We got 235.9 meters or 1.1 grams. And within that, there's some higher grades there. You can see the subintervals. But even another hole, there's 118 meters or 1.09 grams. Okay, this cross section just illustrates what they hit. There are sub units or sub sections within that are higher grade, but overall this is a phenomenal result. It's great, well behaved, reduced intrusive system. Quite frankly, it's open. It's probably open at depth. It's open. Like, think about this drill hole. If you drilled over to the left there, which is to the west, I think you might hit a lot more. Okay, so this is a new target that's now delivering. Rosgobble looks like an absolute beast, and you can see that in the next slide. Go to the next slide. You can see the plan view of all the drill holes here. Now, a lot of these holes don't have assays yet. Okay, so we're going to see a long, steady stream of news out of this company, and I do think they're trying to tell us that we should expect good things, because if you look at many of these holes, which they're scattered over nearly 2 kilometers here, guys, that's crazy. Okay, but if you look at many of these holes, the little gold stars are visible gold that they've observed. So I would expect to see more long strings, perhaps 100 plus, 100, 200, 300 meter intervals of decent grades. And it's open too. Now it kind of looks like it's petering out to the northwest there. There's only a couple spots of VG, but bear in mind the thing might actually take off a little bit more northerly or something. So I wouldn't totally write that off. But to the east there, and this is dated, I mean, this is like September or something, I think. So anyway, to the east there, southeast, it's wide open. Okay, so you already have something 2 kilometers long and probably, a couple hundred meters wide, and it certainly goes down 200 or 300 meters. That's a lot of volume. This looks like a major discovery, and it's just one of many. Bear in mind they have multiple targets they've tested this year. They've talked over and over about CNVG and stuff. Assays are a little slow, okay, because we're back in the unfortunately, we're seeing the same phenomena we saw a couple of years ago, where the labs are completely jammed up because everybody's raised money and they're out drilling, and it's just taken forever. But that's part of life. But lots of good stuff to look forward to. Next slide. Okay, this news release, which came out September 24th, is out of Snowline, and it's actually talking not about Valley. Okay, this is talking about the Jupiter target, which is, it's well to the north of Valley. This is up in the Einerson project. They actually defined 2 projects. So Rogue hosts the Valley target. This one is at Einerson, which is to the north. And one thing I will say is I really like Scott. Scott seems to have the Midas touch. I got to say, he he kind of thinks through things, and he shows a unique ability to test, especially at the early exploration stage, test things in a meaningful way such that you can demonstrate scale. Okay, and in this case, he's drilled some holes. He's done some big steps, okay, big steps, but he's seeing gold sprinkled way, way out. Like now we're looking at a system 2 kilometers long already. And yeah, these are just one-off holes. They're very widely spaced. I mean, there are hundreds of meters between these things. But the fact that he's hit the same style of mineralization again and again and again, do you think there might be a big gold system here? Yeah, look, I think the odds are if you're seeing a handful of holes, routinely hit good high-level orogenic system gold. This is epizonal gold mineralization. That's a good sign. Okay, in my book, this is a very good sign. Here we are, right in the middle of reduced intrusive country. Okay, and we have, lo and behold, a high-level orogenic gold system right in the midst of this too, which I find really intriguing. But kudos to him. But guess what? The second part of this news release, I found even more interesting. Go to the next slide. Same news release. Okay, he talks about, or the company, I should say, talks about some drilling that they've been doing at Valley, or I should say east of Valley. Valley deposit, you can see, is well defined now. You can see all the drill holes over there. Beautiful, cohesive blob of higher grade mineralization with a nice big halo. Yeah, they got some drill holes that they've drilled, particularly to the northeast. You remember last year there was a hole out there. I can't remember. I think it was 115 or something. And they wanted to step out in that direction. So there's clearly something trying to reach out to the northeast. Some of those holes that you see in the northeast have the little gold stars. Means we probably should expect some assays back from that maybe soon that tell us there's expansion there. But over here on the east side of the intrusion, so on the east side of this big pink blob, you can see they've now defined a zone about 500 meters long where they're seeing drill holes that quite frankly look like they're straight out of Valley. Okay, so is there something as big as Valley? I don't know yet. Do they know? Not really. They got enough holes in here to tell us if there's a new deposit over there. Could there be, a sizable inventory of gold? Perhaps, I mean, that footprint there could easily host 2 or 3 million ounces. Okay, so I think that's a significant discovery. I'm very anxious to see what the assays tell us. Don't know yet. We got to wait for those. But it looks interesting. Is this system done yet? No, it's not. That tells us right there. There's more to expect from this deposit. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, Altamira put out an absolute flood of news over the past few weeks while I haven't been live, I'll say. And I want to touch on some of these. I can't just take 20 minutes to talk Altamira. I probably should at some point. But I want to point out some very important things about Altamira's news. Now, first of all, the one in the upper left there, they received an environmental permit for 2 trial mining licenses within the central mineral resource area at Cajueiro. Okay, the historic resource, I shouldn't even say historic. The company drilled the central mineral area years ago, and they have a resource, I think like 600,000 or 700,000 ounces, somewhere in that range. It's open pittable, or it looks like it's open pittable, and they have permits now for that. That's amazing. Okay, they can go ahead and go to trial mining if they wish. That's remarkable because I've seen how long it can take sometimes to get a permit in Brazil, and this was very efficient. So kudos to them. Okay, kudos to them. This is, it has a component of development story that can now be told to the market as well as their exploration upside. That's a positive. All right, now over here on the upper right, we have mention of intersecting. So they are drilling. They're doing a lot of drilling right now. They intersected porphyritic intrusive rocks in the initial drill holes at 2 of the targets. These are 2 targets at Cajueiro. They're kind of up in the north, and I will talk about those briefly. And then down there at the bottom, the headline is they hit 395.5 meters of 0.4 gram per ton in the first drill hole at Maria Bonita, the first deep drill hole at Maria Bonita. Okay, this is, people say, 0.4 grams, that's kind of low. Well, hold on a minute. This is exploration, okay? First of all, did they hit the guts of the thing? We don't know. my gut says no. But when you start to see 400 meters of mineralized rock, that's a huge volume. Okay, that's an absolutely enormous volume of rock that they've intersected that has gold mineralization. And zero point 0.4 gram, by the way, is about $50 US in gold per ton. And are there any mines in Brazil that operate at this kind of grade? Absolutely. Paracatu, one of Kinross's biggest mines and most profitable mines, quite frankly, is milling gold ores at sub 0.4 grams. Okay, I kid you not. A huge tonnage operation, but it's a great mine. It's making lots of money. And the metallurgy we know of this system is quite favorable. So do not discount 0.4 gram in this country. Let's go to the next slide. We'll just touch on a couple of images. First of all, this cross section shows that deep hole. It shows where the position is of this 400-meter interval of 0.4 gram. And it's below some other shallower holes that they drilled over the past few years. So we know the mineralization projects all the way to surface. Could it, what happens in and out of the section, or what happens a bit further? Like, think about it. If this is 0.4 gram and the one above it is 213 meters, 0.8 gram. What if they drilled 400-meter intercept of 0.8 gram? Like, in other words, imagine a drill hole right there. Wow, now we're talking. Okay, this is neurology. Think like that. Okay, don't think, oh, it's 0.4 gram. There's something more going on here, and these guys, quite frankly, have just started to kind of figured it out. All right. So I think they're drilling some more deep holes here, and I'm really anxious to see what happens, in the near environment to this hole, because you could define tens, maybe even a few 100 million tons in a system like this very quickly. Look at Snowline. Look at the enormous size of Valley and how that unfolded. What's 200 million tons of 0.4 or 0.5 gram worth? Well, that's even, that's pretty darn good inventory of gold. So don't discount it. Okay, but this gets even more exciting with the next slide. Let's go to the next one. So they drilled. Oh yeah, this image actually shows. Sorry, this is Maria Bonita, and one of the things that really stands out here is that this little white dashed line they have that's over the top of the magnetics is showing us their interpretation of the porphyry blob that hosts this mineralization. You can see all the white boxes; those are drill holes. But then the one they just announced is at MBA 32. Okay, so that's kind of down there in the lower right. But notice over there, a little ways to the east, within the envelope of the porphyry blob, they have MBA 33 in progress. Again, it's a deep hole. Let's see what they hit there, guys. I mean, this is quite exciting. Let's not discount anything. So more news to come. Let's go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, now the map in the upper left shows all of the discrete gold targets as defined by soils across the Cajueiro project. That central mineralized area, the resources they have, is right there in the middle of that white box where it says Cajueiro Central. That is where that resource is. Now they have the trial mining permits, which is really interesting. Notice Maria Bonita is up there in the upper left, but then you have two targets that are kind of in blue or light bluish gray. There's Tavares Norte and Morro Verde. Okay, then if we go over here to the right, you can see a zoom in of those, and guess what? They have the same kind of porphyry present at those two targets as they do over at Maria Bonita. And quite frankly, we're seeing the same kind of porphyry in all of these things. Okay, and the first drill hole they've put into Tavares Norte hit this kind of core, right? What does that look like? Well, it looks just like the stuff they hit at Maria Bonita. Okay, so you can start to see, a picture where the upside down cow is starting to take shape, right? We got different apophyses of this intrusive porphyry intrusive coming up, and quite frankly, you could have a whole cluster of these things, and that's how you get really, really big gold districts, guys. That's where you get large tonnages and large endowments. Okay, so I'm really excited about Altamira. It's in exploration stage, and I just love to see results like this. Go to the next slide. Okay, El Oro. They did raise money a few weeks ago, and they they're back in the saddle. I get the drills going. They're doing that infill drilling, and lo and behold, this is more towards the east of the targeted infill area. They hit a whopper hole. They got 456 meters, grading 1.72% zinc. Everybody says, zinc. Yeah, what is that? They don't mention silver, by the way, but there is silver in these. I mean, if you look down there at the list of metals, and then, below, there's silver in this interval as well. But this is a whopper zinc intercept. Okay, and zinc, by the way, is $1.50 this week, which is really interesting. But guess what? From my perspective, with my San Cristobal hat on, these are grades that we see. Is El Oro onto a big system, kind of a San Cristobal type system? This is the kind of result I would expect to see from the drilling. We do. So yeah, this is a fantastic result. And quite frankly, these infill holes, once they get them all together and once they get all this drilled, I think will vastly improve their overall resource and really the mine plan that they ultimately develop. All right, so good news out of El Oro. Go to the next slide. Okay, Goliath. They haven't put assays out here in the past 2 or 3 weeks, but they did put out their news release. I think it was late September, maybe it was early October. I can't remember. And the date's not on here. I don't see it. No date. Okay. Anyway, they announced that they completed 64,000 meters. That's absolutely crazy. They were targeting, I think, 60,000 meters, and they blew past it. They got to 64,000 meters, and you can see there some of the stats. They have assays pending for 88 holes drilled in 2025. There's going to be a lot of news. So I'm very optimistic about what we should expect from Goliath over the next few months. Over here on the right-hand side, you can see the image. This was in the news release. It's basically just looking straight down like a plan view of all the drill holes. And anything in red there are intervals where they've seen visible gold, including the holes that have yet to come back from the lab. Okay, so should we expect some more nice intervals, assays? Yeah, I think so. Okay, so they're basically saying, hey, did a great job drilling. We exceeded our target. Hey, we've got a lot of news coming over the next few months. So good on them. Let's go to the next slide. By the way, Goliath did raise, what did they do? They did some sort of flow through deal. And I think they raised money at a premium, which is awesome because it basically gives them that momentum to carry on from season to season. I love seeing that, by the way. It's fantastic. Okay, SK. Look, I'm a director, full disclosure. Got to put my hat on here. All right, so SK, we did a program this summer. We borrowed some of Kenny Conkin's geologists to come up and prospect in that southern area where we found the Bleg sampling we did a few years ago, found a very broad area of strongly anomalous gold in stream sediments. And these guys did a great job. They collected quite a few samples. Most of them are spot rock chips. Some of them are sod channels. But you can see some bonanza grades that they were able to collect, both gold, and there's also quite a bit of copper in most of these. All right, now this is interesting. What is this? We don't know that if it's related to a porphyry, meaning something like, say, Kerr sulfurettes, which is nearby, or it's certainly not VMS. Okay, we've ruled that out. These are not VMS related. But there is an Eocene. What is this, an Eocene? Well, it's an age of intrusive that's nearby, and it happens to be the same age as the intrusion at Goliath. Okay, so these Eocene intrusions, which are kind of subtle, and they are just quietly sitting and scattered around the Golden Triangle, some of them have really interesting gold mineralization, and we're starting to see that kind of picture here at SK. Okay, do we have a target yet? Not quite sure, but this summer's work, once we get all the assays back here in a few weeks, this summer's work should tell us if we're starting to see a center of gravity form. And I'm going to give you a little preview of that with the next slide. Go to the next image. Okay, so on the left here, the little polygons of color are basically our Bleg catchments, or think of it as the stream sediment sample and the area that's being influenced by that sample. In other words, where it's pink, in that catchment, you got high-grade gold, okay? So something's deriving the gold in that big swath through there in the northern part of that image. And you can see the area, see all the little polka dots that we have there. those are samples that these guys collected over the summer. So they only tested a little tiny part of this. There's probably a lot more room. Like whatever these veins are, probably extend off up into the other catchments up there. But they did at least proof of concept. They showed that there's a point source or point sources for gold mineralization that's explaining the gold in these catchments. And then if you come over here to the right and you look at the image there, you go, that's really interesting. Yes, there is a glacier right there. And, this is a snowfield that kind of melts back in the summer, and then, it fills up with snow and then it melts back. But overall, it's starting to shrink and it's starting to go away. Okay, but as that snow field disappears over time, it's exposing these areas of where these guys have found these high grades. This is kind of remarkable. I mean, I've done a lot of prospecting in my career, and to be able to go out and take literally dozens of high grade samples in the course of prospecting activities like this is pretty unusual. It usually means you're onto something. Okay, so onto something. Do we know what it is yet? Not quite. These veins tend to be flat, kind of like sherbet. Similar. Okay, is there an ore body here? Don't know. We got to do more work. Do we have a drill target? We're starting to see some data that points to that. Maybe we could drill some holes and hit, a stack like think baklava type high grade veins. All right, more work needed. Yeah, we do have a bunch of assays coming back, so stay tuned for more news. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, in the same vein, Juggernaut is targeting. This is yet again an Eocene intrusion, but this is up in the northern part of the Golden Triangle. In fact, I think it's almost kind of just out of the northern part of the Golden Triangle, if I remember right. But they found, as the ice melts back, they found this area, this big one target, where they've basically found a huge amount of relatively flat veins, some thick, like 2, 3, 4 meters up to 6 meters thick, say, and many of them. It's not just like one vein or something. They're finding multiple veins in a broad distribution across this property. Do we have assays for all these veins yet? No, but I think the company is going to get assays, like a lot of assays over the next few months. It reminds me of that first year that Goliath did all that work, and they had the vertical or the sawn channel samples and stuff like that. I think we're going to see similar news, we'll say, to the original news that we saw at Goliath in 2020, 2021, in that period, something like that. The data we do have back from here suggests gold, silver, pretty high grade, okay? And it shows the same kind of polymetallic flavor with these veins. So very, very much like Goliath. This could be the Goliath number 2 in the Golden Triangle. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, one of the stories that I got to say is, I think, really underappreciated is Kingfisher. Now, Kingfisher had a project a couple of years ago, the Cloud Break project, and that one did not turn out as well as hoped. But like a lot of companies, they pivoted, and Dustin's done a great job consolidating a very large land position in the northern Golden Triangle in an area where there's a lot of porphyry targets kicking around. And one of the targets they tested this year is this Hank gold silver, or Hank Williams gold silver area. Now, look, there's kind of a couple things going here, but basically this system is the top part of a porphyry complex. Okay, so they're basically right at that critical level where they see epithermal mineralization over broad areas, but they're also chasing the porphyries that are likely driving these systems. And I think they did a great job this summer. Okay, so you can see all the data there in terms of soils and stuff, and the surface samples, beautiful continuity of mineralization, epithermal mineralization. And then you can see the geophysics they did. It shows very discrete targets, and then their interpretation of porphyries at depth. Guess what? They drilled a hole. And I think this hole over here on the right-hand side is, it's the hole number 9, is a Hank Williams HW9 hole. That's chalcopyrite in there, guys. Okay, do we have assays yet? No, but that looks really, really good. Do we know if the entire hole is mineralized like this? Don't know yet, but there's a lot of news coming. And why people aren't paying attention to this story, I don't know. But I'm going to kind of yell and scream and tell people they should read through recent news releases and get a better picture of what's going on at Kingfisher, because I think the work they did this summer is actually starting to see those porphyries that are driving the epithermal systems that are vast across this area. And more importantly, they've also done a very good work. They did a MT survey. In fact, I need to talk with Dustin. I think they're going to have the data processed here shortly. I want to see what those MT targets look like, because I think they could really drive exploration from here. So good job, good technical work, lots of exciting news. This is one to keep an eye on. Go to the next slide. I gotta take a little water here. And tooth hurt, starting to kick in. I think I need more Advil. I left it at home, darn it. Okay, one of the stories we got to pay attention to now is Magotes, because they are ready to drill. In fact, they announced they're going to commence drilling here shortly. Bear in mind this is southern hemisphere, so it is now. Let's see, this is late October. So this is like late April in the northern hemisphere. So it's spring. It is mountainous terrain. Can they just whip up there and start drilling? Not quite, but let's hope they can get in there soon, maybe in a few weeks. And they're going to drill. They got plenty of money to drill. They got their targets defined very well. I did talk with Steve Nano a couple of days ago. He's their technical guy. Very excited about the program that's coming up. What you're seeing on the left-hand side here, that's the Filo deposit. Okay, that's BHP and Lundin. Filo de Sol is an absolutely massive world-class porphyry. It's defined by the green. Is it open to the south? Yes, it is. Okay, and it probably comes down onto these guys' ground. And that's why we are investing in these guys. We think that the red blobs that you see there, it's basically a trail of similar porphyry targets to what they have at Filo de Sol. Bear in mind, there's other targets further to the north. There's a couple other companies that are on this trend too, and they're hitting major porphyry. So guess what? We have a great season ahead of us where they're going to start testing these. And this Los Magotes target, which is the kind of teardrop shaped one immediately south of Filo de Sol, is their first target. You can see it over here on the right-hand side. That's a long section. On the right-hand side, you see, BHP and Lundin's Filo del Sol deposit with all the drill holes. That's the projected pit they're going to have. But then if you follow that along and then you cross the border into the Magotes ground, you can see that bright purple thingy there that looks like a little squid or whale or something underneath the surface. That's their geophysical target they're going to be testing here soon. Okay, and this is exciting because it's basically the same horizon or level as Filo de Sol. Okay, so could we find another one? Heck yeah. There might be a target there that generates a porphyry much like its neighbor. Okay, so stay tuned. This is exciting, seeing them drill. Let's go.
Closeology.
Closeology. Absolutely. Closeology. All right, let's go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, Newfound is kind of back in the saddle here. Like, they picked up the mill, which I think is brilliant. Took them a little while to get there, but, they got the whatever it's called, Maritime Mill or whatever it was called. And I think that's a great step. They got a mine development team in place now, but, they're doing a lot of the work that they need to do, the infill drilling and stuff that they're going to need to do to get this deposit ready for mining. And part of that was stripping back, like they're at Iceberg. They stripped back and excavated the thing and blew, used pressurized water to clean the outcrops off. And then they did channel sampling. And they came up with great numbers. I mean, look at some of these results, 64.8 gram over 6.7 meters and 23.9 gram over 15 meters, et cetera, et cetera. Look at all the numbers there, great numbers. And then over here at Dome, which is another target, I think this is up further north, they hit some nice intervals there, not quite as long, but you can see 10.4 gram per ton over 20.5 meters. 7.5 gram over 13.4. These are great numbers. Okay. This work is going to be ongoing to infill and actually, prepare for mining, but the high grades are continuing here. And I think you have a story that's now shifted full year into the development stage. So basically, I consider this a right-hand story at this point, and that's where I think the value is going to get created as it goes towards becoming a mine. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, Core Silver. They changed their name. Okay, Core Assets changed their name. Focus on silver. That said, they are also looking at copper. Okay, these are 3 news releases that they've released very recently. So they generated a lot of news or information this summer. Do they have assays for all of these things? No, they don't. But at La Verdière, I believe they call it, they have found an extensive area of mineralization. They've expanded the footprint of it at surface. They got some drilling done here as well. And, they think they have a sizable porphyry discovery. Porphyry copper primarily, but there's other metals, silver and other metals there too. And then way up the hill, back towards Jackie at the blue area, you got, sulfide CRD mineralization. So replacement style silver, lead, zinc mineralization in replacement deposits around what is probably another porphyry in that area. And they're chasing both of them here. So, but we should see a lot of news come out of these guys over the next few weeks. Let's hope they hit some good stuff. They're pretty excited by the bullets you see, and I can't read through them all. Quite frankly, they're too darn small. Let's go. Let's go to the next slide. I just realized it's almost two o'clock, and I have a secret surprise for everybody right at the end, and I don't want to blow it. Okay, Electrum. Electrum has pivoted. Okay, they tried testing Timok East, didn't quite hit much. They did some more surface work, interesting results, but they've decided to refocus on this Novo Tolmino, I believe it is, which is a gold target. And they do have a resource there, 7.1 million tons, 2.5 gram inferred already. Okay, this is a gold target. Pivoting to this, I think, is a good move. They called me a couple months ago and said, hey, should we pivot? I said, absolutely. Let's get going here. This is the market to do it. They've raised some money, and I think they're going to go out and drill shortly. Let's go to the next slide. Yukon Metals, early stage on all their projects, but they did see some really encouraging results from the Birch property. This is a high-grade copper skarn. I would say it probably has potential for copper and also silver, maybe even a little bit of gold, don't know. But they did see extensive skarn mineralization in the drilling. Do we have all the assays, all the data back yet? No, but it seems to be an interesting new discovery. I'll wait until I can see all the data before I say much more, but it does look interesting. Let's go to the next slide. Sorry, I'm trying to put my skates on here. Okay, Trifecta. Look, this is a reduced intrusive story in the Yukon. It's off to the east there. This Rye property that the lower image comes from is, in my book, my favorite project that they have, okay, because it's a reduced intrusive and they see sheeted veins. And they did enough drilling this summer to say, hey, we do see sheeted veining in some of the drill holes. And in particular, it's in the holes that are actually a bit further from the actual mapped intrusives. These are holes that are out in the country rock, the schistose rocks that are next door. Does that mean it's not quite a reduced intrusive story? No, actually, Banyan, for example, is entirely in schistose rocks. So you can't discount this, but they do see the sheeted veins, and they do see some of the bismuth sulfur salts and stuff like this. Not a mention of EG yet, but they do have a lot of numbers. Look at all the values they have at surface that do hit visible gold, or I should say hit assayable gold, significant numbers. Now, I talked to Richard after they got done, and they put this news release out, and I saw it. I said, Richard, what's the anticipated timing for getting assays out? He said, look, it's going to be a few weeks because the labs are so backed up. I think it was like 2 weeks ago when they actually got the core to the sawing facility. So, this could be late November, I don't know, December or something. So people got to be a little bit patient. I think the story lost a lot of its oomph because they don't have that immediate news, but maybe it's like Snowline where, that sometime late this year, early next year, they start to release a few holes that hit 100, 200 meter long intervals of decent gold. And all of a sudden we have a new reduced intrusive story to talk about. I'm still quite excited. I'm just sitting tight, waiting for news. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, Silver 47. They talked about drilling up at Red Mountain. They also talked about drilling in Nevada. I'm going to focus on Red Mountain because that's the target. These are the targets I really am passionate about. These are the VMS targets up in Alaska. Red Mountain's a very extensive project that has a lot of VMS targets. The two most prominent VMS targets are West Tundra Flat and Dry Creek. Okay, and the two images on the right show the long, basically cross-sectional views of the drilling that they've done and how these things are open. You can see some of the assays they hit. They've done quite a bit of drilling here, but they have a lot of assays coming back. I think there's assays for 8 additional holes that are still out. But look at the numbers they're hitting: 640 grams silver equivalent over 6.9 meters. You got 736 silver equivalent over 3 meters. 344 over 12.8 meters. Some pretty good numbers coming out of both West Cinder Flat and Dry Creek. And then you can see over here in the image on the right-hand side that these things are wide open for expansion in both cases. This is where I think you could see a VMS story, a pretty high silver VMS story emerge that maybe does have a big company kind of scale to it. So, good on them. Looks like a productive summer. Be interesting to see how they drill some of their other targets over the winter months, but let's wait and see what they hit out of these holes. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is my surprise right at the end here. Okay, got 9 minutes. Sorry about this, guys, but Kalo Gold. Okay, we invested in Kalo in late 2022, I believe it was. They had a bit of a false start. Okay, they got going. They had just enough money to be dangerous. They went out and they didn't collect all the basic data they needed. And in my view, they drilled extremely prematurely and they basically spent their treasury and they landed in a heap. Okay. I was be flat out. I was pretty darned irritated with them. But there's always this thing called redemption, and they came crawling back and said, "Hey, let's talk more about what we could do to bolster our technical data and get a better picture before we go drill again." They also built up their team more, their geologic team. And guess what? If you do that hard work, you can make discovery, and they have. Okay, so I'm happy to say that the hard work that they put into this and that redemption that we gave them by helping them get financing and kind of pushing them along has paid off. All right, so let's go to the next slide. That's where the activist stuff comes in, right? All right, so what are we looking at here? Look, this is a golden Fiji story. It is on the Northeast Island. Okay, so you can see the Vatu Orum. I love the name. Vatu Gold project is on that Northeast Island. Why do I like to? Well, I'll tell you what. At Newmont, I had a good friend. This is his favorite epithermal / alkaline target in the world. Okay, and that's always stood out in my brain. So when we saw an opportunity, I told Kevin and Tavi, let's look at this pretty hard. Anyway, that Vatu Orum is what we're going to talk about today. Go to the next slide. I don't have much time, so I got to hustle. Okay, here's their land position. They got a very good land position. That's one of the criteria I have. The company has to have a comprehensive land position over the entirety of the target. I don't like companies that have piecemeal land and stuff. These guys have 367 square kilometers, which is great. That's a district scale land position. It's in this Nubu graben, which is basically a structural graben where the crust is pulled apart a bit, but that allows hot fluids and hot magmas and stuff to come up and form a system like this. Okay, let's now, before we move on, sorry, there's different targets types that are shown here. Colors, I can't get into the weeds right now, but basically epithermal, like think hot springs, is purple. Okay, diatreme, what is that? Well, those are vents, like volcanic vents that have erupted. They also can host mineralization. There's some of those here. Okay, and then there's other types. But I'm going to jump forward here. Let's go to the next slide. I want to try to knock this out before 2 o'clock. So this Aurum Prime, the two mineralizing styles, you have both the epithermal targets here, which are the purple blobs, and the diatreme. So we've zoomed way in, and we're looking at this Aurum Prime. The diatremes are really fascinating. Now, one of the things I talked to these guys about doing was CSAMT, and they did do that. Okay, thank God. All right, because that helped them target this sucker, and they were able to swing the drill around and actually hit their targets. They had defined targets, and they were able to hit Thank God. All right. Yes, they collected other data. They got surface sampling and stuff, and rock chip sampling and mapping and stuff that showed very strong, very nice geochemical anomalism at surface. But man, finding those diatremes, those little green circular things, very important here. And they targeted one. Okay, go to the next slide. And you can see that box shows the first hole, QC1 or whatever it is. It's VA25 DH11, but it's QC1. It's basically the first target hole in this target, 22.12 meters at 12.8 gram per ton gold. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. I mean, how often do you hit that? And especially in a greenfield target. This is a brand new greenfield discovery, guys. And inside of that, yeah, there is some high grade. There's 7 meters of there we go, 7 meters of 35 gram, and then 1 meter inside of that of 83 grams. So, there's bonanza grade in here, and that's exactly what we like to see in a system like this. They only drilled 11 holes, so 2,436 meters. Your odds of hitting something are slightly better than if you'd never been born at all, but these guys did it, okay? And they did it with good data, good science. Thank goodness. And now they have a discovery they can follow up on. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, what is this thing? Well, a diatreme, like I said, is a volcanic vent that comes up, usually when the hot magma hits groundwaters, which are, sitting there minding their own business. The magma triggers very rapid expansion of the groundwater, and it basically blows a hole in the ground like a bullet coming up through the crust. You can see a diatreme eruption actually I think in New Zealand over here on the right. Okay, so that diatreme, once that hole is opened up, fluids can then come up that hole and they can mineralize the diatreme itself, and that's what these guys targeted. Okay, so they targeted for ore bodies in the margin, the wall of the diatreme. Let's go to the next slide. This is some of the core they got. Okay, this runs 18 grams here, but this is out of that interval. And you can see the breccia, the rock fragments, it's all broken up. And then beautiful silica running through there. I mean, this is just beautiful epithermal quartz, like true low sulfidation stuff. But I think as you go downward, you'll see this morph into what we call more of a classic alkaline system. This is just the top of an alkaline system. I think this is wonderful. Okay, this thing looks like a bona fide discovery. Go to the next slide. Okay, now here's where it gets really important. Now, they didn't show all of the sections of CSAMT. Instead, what they did is they distilled this down to their interpretation of the CSAMT data and the targets they have. So the gray things are basically structures that they think they can see in the CSAMT. And then those blobs are basically resistive zones where they think hot fluids came in and silicified the rock and made it resistive. And they have multiple targets. Now that's wonderful because now you can start poking holes at each one of those things. Some are going to hit, some are not, but at least you have holes or targets you can test. And lo and behold, the QC1 diatreme, which is the one that the arrow's pointing to, that hit like the first test in that hole or that diatreme, bam, they hit it. At this scale, those things look small. They're not small. Okay, that's 500-meter bar down there in the lower right. So these are big targets, and they're scattered across the property. I think these guys have a good future ahead of them.